Does this pedigree show an autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive inheritance pattern? Remember that autosomal genes are going to be found on chromosomes that don't determine the sex. So these are chromosomes 1 through 22 for humans. In autosomal dominant inheritance, people who are affected can either be homozygous dominant or heterozygous. People who are not affected are going to be homozygous recessive. This pedigree shows an autosomal dominant inheritance, but the parents are both heterozygous. That's because this person here is homozygous recessive, which means they had to get one of each of these alleles from each parent. Now, this individual here is going to have a question mark for the second allele, because we don't know if it's heterozygous or homozygous dominant. So sometimes in these pedigrees, question marks are the right answer. This pedigree shows us an autosomal recessive inheritance pattern, where anyone who is affected, like this circle, is going to be homozygous recessive, which again means the parents are going to be heterozygous. Another name for heterozygous in these types are carriers. Now, in this case, we're not showing those carriers as being half shaded in, but we know they're carriers because the daughter is homozygous recessive. And again, this individual is going to have a question mark for the second allele since we can't tell if it's homozygous dominant or heterozygous. All right, back to our pedigree. Take a second and see if you can figure out if this pedigree shows an autosomal dominant or an autosomal recessive disorder. I put the two little lines under the squares and circles to help my students remember that each person is going to have a genotype or two alleles for a specific trait. Pause this video and see if you can figure it out. The answer is it's actually both. For this pedigree, it could be either autosomal dominant or autosomal recessive. And sometimes some pedigrees can be both. It just takes a little bit more information to figure out what type of inheritance pattern the pedigree is actually showing.